So, do you guys want to join the Q&A, or do you have to get ready for the performance?
We'll have to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have to go. We'll see you there, okay?
See you there, yeah. Guys, Wrexham Raiders.
Cheers.
Dennis is the director of the movie. My very first question.
Does anybody here doesn't speak Dutch? Yeah, so we'll keep it in English.
Sorry, darling.
Yeah, no, for you everything will be in English.
Oh.
Yeah. No, my very first question has been burning from the first time I saw it.
Kan ik zo zitten?
Why do you hate Ringo Starr? I don't think he's dead yet.
Why do you think I hate Ringo Starr?
No, it's just a few times you say that he's dead. It's dedicated to Ringo Starr, to his legacy.
I think that Ringo Starr has been appreciated after he died.
Okay, he will be appreciated when he dies.
Okay, the character of Henry van Loon, he's rather pretentious. So there are constantly flaws in his logic.
Right.
And one of the flaws is the fact that Ringo Starr isn't in fact dead. But I do think, to be quite frank, I'm not a fan of Yellow Submarine, but I fucking love Octopus's Garden. Like, you know, I like to be in Octopus's Garden in the shades. It's a great song. So I do think Ringo Starr is great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's a mistake you made.
Okay. Right. But you chose Henry van Loon as the narrator, and it does sort of make it less of like a documentary that just portrays that just gives a vision into the reality. It does give it like a narrative and a script and a storyline. Why did you choose to invite like an outsider as a narrator?
Well, he's not. Well, we put him in the role of a narrator, but it's as a matter of fact, he doesn't actually give clues about the story. The narration is in the documentary scenes. We put Henry in there as a counterpart to the let's say extravagant world of the Rectum Raiders. Because style-wise, we were very inspired by the old horror films of like the 1950s and 1960s, and Rocky Horror Picture Show is a great response to that. And you have like these very outrageous characters, outrageous stories, horror stories from time to time, and then they give a storyteller there to give it some like social comment and to make it more upper class. But we created Henry van Loon as a parallel character to Jaco, who also tries to give his own life more of let's say pretentiousness. He's trying to give it more meaning, he's trying to put himself more out there than he is. So Henry is actually a parallel character as a narrator who eventually loses control of his part.
With his own narration. Yeah, at times I thought that it was sort of looking down on the Rectum Raiders, but it was more that he just sort of loses control of himself.
Yeah, well, you could also look down on Henry. I look
Right.
down on Henry's part, on the Wrexham Raiders.
Okay.
Love the X-Raiders.
So would you say that the...
That would be naughty, wouldn't it? Like not liking the X-Raiders, preferring Henry, that would be naughty.
That would be bad, yeah.
Let's not be naughty.
Let's not do that, no. Let's not go into that.
No.
But you say that, yeah, Henry is a storyteller. Would you say that the Rectum Raiders, or the X-Raiders now, that their performance on stage is more of a story, or is it kind of who they are?
It's definitely who they are. But what we are searching, the director of photography, who is also the screenwriter, Thomas, and I, are actually working on a kind of style, a documentary style, which feels like a fiction film. So we try to maintain as much control on the sound, which with Brendan Grutzinger. 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 Oh, I love that name, Grutzinger. Like, would have been a great colonel in the German war, like Colonel Grutzinger. But we try to grab as much control of the documentary situation, so we can, with audio, with visuals, with lighting, and we've got like electricians running around set while the band doesn't really know it, but so we can constantly put lights everywhere, so it feels much more like a fiction film. We try to grasp control over the documentary situation, so the scenes are much more focused, so you, as an audience, you much more know where you're looking at. It's not like, ooh, what can I observe right now? So we're actually working rather hard to get a style which feels like a fiction film and feels much more like a roller coaster, instead of like this documentary in which you have to a quest for what can we see in the image now.
So you constantly had like a team ready to just light and do the audio for any moment.
We've got a great big team, so we can make the audiovisual kind of film we want to make. We are actually, Thomas and I are like fiction makers lost in documentary land. I guess that's the best way to.
What do you mean by that? Like, is it just style?
Well, the documentary audience usually actually goes into a room, and the documentary film is much more linked to journalism instead of storytelling.
Yeah.
They're much more interested in like, oh, this is an interesting fact, this is an interesting fact, and I didn't know this about that, and what a fascinating culture, and oh, these refugees, they've got such a horrible time, I'm fascinated by that. And we're not really into that. We want to tell stories like Orson Welles, like David Lynch, like David Fincher, like Stanley Kubrick. Those are our inspirations, and not the human rights matters. But of course, they need a place. But we're not observing from a backstage makers. We want to dive in there in a filmic language and make something audiovisual and really tell a story with a narrative from beginning to end.
So being objective should be in balance with being entertaining.
What do you mean with objective?
Like, I think that very often documentary makers, they just try to give like a realistic picture of the world, but you also aim for entertainment.
That's the biggest bullshit ever. Not to you, but like, oh yeah, we try to get this objective image. Nobody has an objective image.
That's
if you
true.
talk to Sonny Bergman, you'll get a very colored image of the world. If you talk to Michael Moore, you'll get a very colored image of the world. But they pretend it's the reality. I'm not pretending to make the reality. I'm telling you, I'm making a film. I'm making a filmic reality, and the documentary reality, it's in there. But no maker, not any filmmaker, can grasp reality because everything is colored, and just show all the colors so the audience also knows what they're watching.
Is it also why you easily sort of injected yourself into the documentary by going into dialogue at certain times? By sort of through the letter from your doctor?
I find it very horrible.
Why is that?
Because it makes it, well, every film I make is of course personal, but the fact that it's my own letter, it's the letter my doctor wrote to me, immediately makes you very vulnerable. And I've got multiple phone calls by my parents who live in Twente, and they were like, no Dennis, no, don't put that in. Oh, not everybody has to know that you got like problems and all, and keep that out of the film, Dennis.
Right.
So it made me very vulnerable, and they're like two beer units a day. No.
Right.
Well,
So that's mostly just your style. That you try and make the truth as interesting as a Hollywood movie.
Yes.
I've seen another documentary of yours about Herman Brood before. Mm-hmm. It's a completely different genre than this. How did you get in touch with the Wrexham Raiders?
Well, I got in touch with them. Well, are you asking about the boys or the style?
The start, like why the idea, the inception of the documentary.
Well, first of all, I always enjoyed the music of the Rectum Raiders. I knew them with their first video clip online, like they had this Schwoelba, it's in the film. Mm-hmm. The first time I saw that, I was like, fuck yeah, we've got a band in the Netherlands, which is out there, which is, well, gay or whatever, it doesn't really care. And it's outspoken. It's true, honest rock and roll. So the first time I saw them, I thought like, these guys are interesting. And then I got to live in a student house in Zeeburger Island, which is it's just like this greenhouse with 30 people, and everybody's addicted to drugs.
Students.
Students. And when I started living there, it was like a cool Herman Brood kind of place. Now it's like Christian and F. weer Kinder van Bahnhof, so 40-year-old heroin hooker kind of place. So I left there. But back then it was really rock and roll and cool. And then I'm a singer myself, and the bass player around there decided that we should form a band of the student house. And I said like, yeah, I'm up for it. And he said like, well, then Guus is gonna be the guitar player. And he also plays the guitar in the band, the Rectum Raiders. And I was like, fuck yeah. So then I was like,
amazing.
That was a great insertion into the world of the Rectum Raiders.
Right.
Guus was my insertion.
You raided their world.
Oh yeah.
Nice. And you mentioned there like the gay themes, the homoerotic things. But I think
gay themes, homoerotic themes?
I don't know. Yeah.
Oh.
One of they were surprised themselves that the cucumber might be a phallic symbol, but they are there, the gay undertones. But I think they all have girlfriends, or they're at least mostly straight. Why do you think they they choose to.
Well, I've got a football. It doesn't mean I play with it.
That's true. Yeah.
No, I guess what the Rectum Raiders or the X-Raiders stand for is a sexual liberty and not having to explain any kind of sexual behavior. And I think that's the next step. I have great appreciation for the gay prides and what these guys fought for in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It's humongous. It's made enormous steps. But right now, I think it's the next best step is that we don't have to verklaren. Explain our sexual behavior. We should be able to love one another.
Should never label.
We should be labelless. That makes it much more easy. There are people in the province who have this image that anybody who's homosexual is like Gerard Joling. Gerard Joling's fine, but if you don't identify with him and you have to explain to your parents like, yeah, well, you know, I like, you have to explain like, I like guys, but no, I'm not wearing a bow tie and I'm not going to sing Maak me gek. These kind of explanations, sexuality doesn't need it. Sexuality comes from the inside, it doesn't need a subculture, it doesn't need explanations. It should just be out there and don't need any labels, everybody should just be free. So the Rectum Raiders are not explaining any kind of sexual behavior. And what I notice about them is they are sexually rather free, which I really encourage. And I stick behind that opinion.
So my asking about why straight guys act like this is actually a perpetuation of
why do you think they're straight guys? That's
exactly. It's a perpetuation of stereotype. Well,
terrible.
I've been
like if anybody like I always tend to use these straight stereotypes. Like when anybody is talking about Football International, I like to joke like, well, that's so straight of yours to talk about Football International and to watch football. I mean, it's bizarre to think in stereotypes in regard to sexuality. It's the first thing we should lose in this society.
Is it that the world is just not ready for this message?
Well, we're the first ones to take the message.
Right.
Fuck yeah.
Is there anyone in the audience that has a question for Dennis? You've all seen the movie. It's been very fascinating.
Yeah, I was wondering, is there a personal connection between Henry van Loon and the band? Or Dennis, for that matter?
No, the idea for Henry was Thomas's, because Thomas he did the second camera for a film called Bros Before Hoes, and we always liked Henry's work. And so we actually contacted him like, would you like to be the narrator? He was our first top choice, like second or third were Raymond Thierry and Alex van Warmerdam, but we didn't have to call him because Henry immediately agreed. And he's also going to be playing a small part in our next film. So we try to get him back every time we make a film.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for being here today at Inedit, the first edition. I want to thank Dennis, of course, for being here to talk with us and to make this wonderful documentary. Tomorrow there are also going to be a few other pretty amazing documentaries, so I hope you'll join again. And I'd like to invite you all to go to Pacific and enjoy the X-Raiders. Thanks, Dennis.